always think if I can imagine it, I can draw it, and if I can draw it, I can make it. I can work out how to make it.
Welcome back to Artfully Crafted. My name is Alienor, and each week I travel to a craft person's studio, interview them and show you their work. This week we're travelling to Hazelmere to meet with bespoke metalworker Matt Livsey Hammond. I particularly love his depictions of animals and mythical creatures such as snakes and gargoyles and dragons. Clearly his imagination knows no bounds. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and let's get into it. Hi Matt.
Hi.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
We're actually in your study, but we've got a whole workshop next to us, and we're near Hazelmere.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm quite excited to be here because I've been sort of known your work for a few years now, from back in the days when I was at the World of Interiors, and then when I worked at Sterling Studios as well. I feel like we've sort of been aware of each other for a long time but had never met in person.
Right.
So so this is great. So maybe we can kick things off with you telling us what you do.
We make bespoke metalwork, but design and make, and it's usually ornate. We make furniture, lighting, but what we particularly specialise in is stair balustrades, and particularly curving stair balustrades.
Mm-hmm.
More ornate the better.
I love that.
Yeah.
And yeah, you said you said to me that the design element is quite important to you,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, I always refuse to make other people's designs. It's always got to be my design, and we make my designs. Obviously, I work with a client a lot, to get something that they're really happy with. But kind of basically, it's all about designing, making, and finishing.
So, what is it about curved stair balustrades that requires a unique set of skills, that you have?
Sure. So it's obviously working in 3 dimensions because a lot of the staircases we make are using scrolls. So obviously they're curling that way, but with a curving staircase, they also have to curve to the side as well. So they're a 3-dimensional object. So we make them flat and then curve them back against themselves the way they don't want to curve. Because obviously they're quite often made from flat metal, like this, and curving this kind of thing to the side is very difficult because it's you're curving the metal in a way that it doesn't want to bend. So you have to heat them a lot to do that.
And so, how does it work in terms of process? I'm intrigued in terms of, because you said you work with the client or with the designer and you make the design yourself.
Yeah.
I'd love to understand more about the commissioning process and also at what stage of the project you come into. Is the sort of, are the steps already made by the time you start making the balustrade, that sort of thing?
Usually, ideally the staircase will already be there, in which case we can go and literally mould. We end up making a kind of wooden template of that staircase, but in 3 dimensions, particularly on the curving staircases. They're quite complicated templates, often using kind of metal armatures to get it all exactly in the right place. And then we bring them back here and then make a replica of that, so it's kind of mould of the mould. So that way we can have an exact or as precise as it can possibly be replica of the staircase on site in the workshop. So we can heat metal on that replica, because obviously doing it on site, there's all sorts of health and safety issues with hot metal, etc. So that's the only way to do it. It's been done like that for centuries. So.
And so, are there any sort of like a design, because you mentioned health and safety, for example, are there any design considerations when it comes to health and safety regulations?
For stair balustrades there are, yeah. So obviously you can't have any gaps that a baby's head can fit through. So a 100mm sphere shouldn't be able to pass through the balustrade.
So we've done that as like this sort of, this is like standard baby's head size.
Exactly, which is actually very small.
Right.
So which is why it makes a stair balustrade very dense visually, because obviously this kind of thing, a sphere could almost pass through there, but not quite. So you can have like that kind of thing is fine, because a sphere can't pass through it. But it's actually quite a big space.
How do you check for that as you're designing? Because it would be so easy to, there's so many different parts of this staircase. Yeah, it would be easy to
absolutely.
miss.
Yeah, we have kind of 100mm sphere that we just check. But obviously, because all the designs I draw 1-to-1 full scale, so we can work onto them, and at that stage I can check that it does conform to all those rules, and there's always the climbability thing as well. So any balustrade shouldn't be sort of readily climbable by an under 5-year-old.
Okay,
so we can't have too many footholds.
So how is something defined as climbable or not?
Well, essentially kids can climb literally anything. They can climb that, but it's just whether it's readily climbable. That's the term they use. So.
Yeah, it seems like almost like a very sort of
it's quite
like
vague.
in the eye of the beholder whether something is climbable or not.
Exactly.
Probably also depends on the kids. Some more resourceful than others, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, and then how do you find? Because you just mentioned that you draw things by hand.
Yeah.
A lot of designers and architects are more and more drawing things through CAD. How do you interact with that?
Obviously we get sent CAD files and I can look at those, but we don't actually do, or I don't do CAD files, CAD drawings, because I just don't use them. I don't use scale drawings. I always prefer to draw things by hand and full scale, because in that way, this is why I insist on doing our own design, because at every stage I'm refining and trying to improve, like every single line. When I draw the line, I'm sort of just trying to perfect it with lots of lines, and then I'll pick the best one, etc. So it's, for me, there's no other way to do it than draw, by hand, full scale.
And because I think you showed me some of your full scale drawings, and you actually use them then as the template on which you're working, right? And you sort of pin it to the worktop, right?
That's right. We've got a very large wooden bench that we screw the drawings down onto, because I draw them on hardboard, and we screw those down, and then make the metal to match those drawings exactly, and then screw those down onto the wood, and then literally we can weld them together on the wood. So we get an exact representation of what's on the drawing. So I do these full-scale drawings.
You would need to do that anyway, in a way, right?
Exactly.
Like, even if you did do things into CAD, you would then need to have it on the board.
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of people they'll get a CAD drawing sent to them, and then they'll photocopy it and then enlarge it and work on that. But obviously, a tiny line on CAD will become a thick line like that, so it gets
and also
lost.
you can have shrinkage in the paper and things like that.
Well,
like
all sorts of things
it's
like that.
remarkable just how easily those things can
absolutely,
be off by a few millimeters. And then that's the thing, is actually, when you're working on this type of project, millimeters do matter, don't they?
Yeah. So it's absolutely precise.
And so what happens when the staircase doesn't already exist?
That is quite tricky, particularly with a curving staircase, because it's a three-dimensional thing. But in the past, we worked on a restaurant, which restaurants and commercial projects have to be done so quickly, and this kind of work it takes a long time. So in that case, they built as a replica curving wooden staircase, and we had it out in the workshop, and we kind of bent the metal to it, and we were able to meet the building schedule, and they were able to open on time.
That's amazing.
Yeah, definitely, because it is obviously because it was a replica staircase that was made before the actual staircase was made. To get it from that to and it fit pretty well. We just had to do a few tweaks, but it's pretty good.
How much tolerance is there? Because I'm coming from a background of having worked in sort of igloo-mise, where the tolerance is of once you start decorating the glass, like you can't cut it, you can't change the size. Yeah. How much leeway do you have when you're making something?
Well, the beauty about metal is that you can heat it and bend it. We can't often do that on site, but there's there's ways we can kind of tease it back into shape and get it to match what's there.
Yeah, because how precise? In terms of like the stonework or the thing that the staircase is made out of, like how precise would that be in terms of their template versus?
Well, that's the thing. With closed string staircase, if they're made in stone, they're actually carved by hand. So that the kind of curved corners are rising like that, and they're actually made by hand. So and you can't draw that on CADs. It's all got to be kind of formed, kind of just there in the stone. So, and then matching that with in the past, if possible, we mould what's already there,
right,
and then obviously mould that, and use that as a guide. But
so sometimes that's not possible, and then you've got to have enough leeway on your side to be able to adjust things to what is essentially a handmade staircase.
Yeah, and it's really important that because obviously with a closed string staircase like that, we have a base rail, but obviously if there's even a tiny little gap at the bottom, it just looks awful. So it's got to match exactly what's there, which is why we mould them.
Really tricky.
Yeah.
And it's it is really interesting to see. You're describing, you have so many considerations even just at the design stage, and then you have the considerations in terms of the templating, etc. So it's sort of like a never-ending problem solving in a way, and sort of a puzzle of things that have to fit together.
Yeah, but it's a great challenge trying to work it all out. And it's different on every project as well. There's always some little twist.
Yeah. Well, speaking of a twist, you told me about a project for a private club where sort of you had to kind of adapt on site, right?
Yeah, on a particular restaurant project, during the project, the client got an opportunity to buy the floor above. So they did that, and then we extended the staircase. But obviously the restaurant, they wanted to open the restaurant, so we'd have to go in really early in the morning and at night to finish off the rest of the staircase, and it was really sinuous. So it was quite a challenge to do that project, but it was great fun.
Well, because that's the thing is, you know, working on site is always going to be quite tricky, and especially when you're having to fit around other people's work and make sure you protect it so you're not damaging it, etc.
Yeah.
But if you're doing that around a working restaurant, when, you know, they don't want to be constantly having to like dust things, and they want to be able to like finish their shift, lay the table in for it to be ready for the next day, etc. I mean,
I mean, metalwork is you know, it involves grinding and welding and dusty things. You know, it's quite a messy business. And then welding above kind of finished carpets is, you know, we cover it in plastic and dust sheets, and then you know, kind of heat proof, you know, fireproof blankets and things like that. So yeah.
And you were having to do that every time you were going in, basically at night.
Every time, and then obviously taking it all up, hoovering all the dust up is
you
crazy.
were probably having as much time to actually work as you were setting up and taking down, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Gosh. And how about in terms of like particles and air and stuff? Like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, we have mobile dust extractors, so that would suck the air into the.
And so you had that running in the middle of a restaurant.
Yeah. I mean, the restaurant was closed, obviously. But.
Yeah. But I love that. I mean, that's, you know, the kind of story that, you know, people, you know, you can't imagine that unless you've worked in our kind of world. And,
Sure.
You know, you just make the impossible happen.
Yeah, well, you have to, yeah. Sure.
Talking about commissions and sort of projects with interior designers, what has been the trickiest project, or the most difficult project that you've ever had?
I mean, the you know, they all have their unique challenges, which is great. But the probably the one that springs to mind is we made fairly recently a very large chandelier for a project in Switzerland. It was a very big chandelier with 18 arms, and we realised that it was just going to be way too heavy to make it in just metal. Even in aluminium, it would have just been way too heavy. So I had to incorporate lots of wood and lots of, you know, kind of cast resin, etc. It had hundreds of little resin finials and pendants that were all handmade and carved. And then the whole thing was gilded. But all of the arms, well, I carved this in wood, and then this was cast in aluminium. It had to be hollow, obviously, because of the wiring. So the wiring went through there and then came up into a lamp. So, you know, 18 lamps makes a lot of wiring, you know, to wire up. So it was all very complicated. But it was, you know, an amazing thing to make. It was great fun to make. Casting all the little finials took an extraordinary amount of time. It took way longer than it should have, but, you know, what a great thing.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you said it's in Switzerland, so did you make it all in different parts as well?
Exactly, yeah. We had to make it so it would come apart very easily, and then be kind of safe for shipping.
Yeah.
And then easily kind of reconstructed, and then obviously hung up.
So when you were designing this, did you, before you started spending all that time carving, etc., do you sort of make like a mini maquette just to test how things will sort of like fit together or something like that, and then you sort of make it full scale and start carving, or like how does it work?
I mean, so obviously I do the full scale drawings, and with the full scale drawings I can work out how it all goes together. So some of it had to be hollow, so we could fit all the wiring, etc. in. Obviously there had to be a tube for the mains wiring to come in. So it's, you know, I can kind of visualise it on the full scale drawing. Because
It sounds like a lot of that comes from the experience that you've built up, right? Because it seems like for you it's become second nature to take into account, like, okay, for the wiring I need this much space, or for, you know, for health and safety regulations I need this, etc. I mean, because it's not, you know, if you're someone who's a designer, you might not necessarily like have all of that knowledge and experience ready at hand, but for you it's second nature now, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, even on initial drawings, when I'm kind of sketching out ideas, I know when I'm drawing it how I'm going to make it, and how it's all going to kind of go together, and whether it's going to meet, you know, any building control, etc. So it's over the years, it's just become a sort of natural thing.
Because you work, I mean, presumably if you do work for Switzerland, you kind of work worldwide as well, right?
Yeah.
But all of these different regulations, etc., everything changes, and then also you mentioned taking into consideration shipping, but shipping will also invariably, you know, whether it's you know, by sea or air or whatever, all of that changes for every single project, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. I have to sort of do a little bit of research on every project, you know, to just check out what, you know, US building regs are for staircases, etc. You know, I have to just get clued up on that kind of thing. So
that must take an extraordinary amount of time.
I mean, it does, but you know, with the internet, it's quite easy to kind of look up specific, because in America as well, it's per state, so they have different regulations per state. So
yeah, I did. And you mentioned carving in wood. I mean, you introduced, you know, metalwork. Now you mention wood. Yeah. So what materials can you work in?
Okay, I you know, I don't want to be just restricted to metalwork. I've set the workshop up for metalwork, but you know, I love carving in wood, working in wood. Love designing. Not necessarily making stone and marble things, but you know, I love incorporating it into furniture. Glass. We made a stair balustrade for a house in Cork a few years ago that had crystal balls in it, which is brilliant. Yeah.
My goodness. Okay, so you're primarily making in metalwork, wood as well, but then you're really sort of designing with lots of different materials in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, well, whatever I can use, I will. Obviously, client willing. So
yes.
And upholstery, of course. You know.
Oh,
any
of
chairs.
course. I mean, there's obviously an extraordinary amount of time dedicated to each project. Is each project totally unique?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I love them being all unique. Even if we make furniture, like every bit is slightly different to the next. You know, if it's a furniture commission from a gallery, if they sell one, we'll make a new one, but it'll be slightly different.
So for you, it's as much that sort of like challenge, isn't it, of having something new, something to sort of design or wrap your head around, etc.
Yeah. I mean, you know, that I'm excited to come to work. I'd hate to make the same thing over and over again. You know, I just lose enthusiasm. For me, it's on every project. I'm trying to improve the way we work, the techniques, you know, the design. So it's progression. It's endlessly improving. I mean, that's what life is all about for me. You know?
Yeah. And how helpful is it for you when you're discussing things with a client or with an interior designer? How helpful is it when they give you quite a lot of, you know, detail and sort of overview on the project?
Absolutely, as much as possible. You know, if I can meet a client and you know, kind of try and work out what their taste is. You know, I quite often sit with them with a portfolio and get them to say what they do and don't like about, you know, various projects we've done in the past. I can sort of just try to kind of work out, you know, what, you know, their likes and dislikes, and then tailor the design to that, you know, to how they like, how they're thinking. Yeah.
And so I guess as well, understanding what the rest of the room is going to look like, that's also part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. All the furniture, you know, as much information as possible, like, you know, what the style of the house is, what furniture is in the space, how it's kind of seen from a distance for visitors. You know, it's all really important stuff. So.
So when you're estimating for a project, what are the different things that you've got to take into considerations? What are the biggest factors that impact the cost?
Obviously, it's the time is the biggest factor, because obviously that means that it's a lot of labour. The materials, obviously, that's quite a big factor, and it's kind of scheduling alongside other projects. So, you know, we're constantly sort of juggling several projects at once. You know, there's always a couple going on at the same time, but you know, there are delays in projects and some get brought forward. So it's either, you know, we're kind of very, very busy, or there's not quite enough work, but it's, you know, it's just finding a kind of balance, trying to sort of negotiate our way through that. It's quite tricky.
And you mentioned to me that there are times when you'll get so busy with a project that you actually have other people come and help you, and then the project becomes sort of all-consuming, right? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, you know, particularly on commercial projects, we have to, you know, I've got a few friends that I can kind of bring in, but, you know, I've worked with loads of times before, so we can kind of expand the kind of workforce as needed. So yeah, that's what we have to do sometimes.
Yeah, you don't really have, because I mean, when you were showing me your sketches as well, it's clear that when you're not in the workshop, you're sort of out and about drawing, etc. I mean, it's sort of all-consuming, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then, as well, if you're sort of in the midst of a really project, you're probably sort of, you know, in the daytime, you're probably with the team sort of working, but then you're probably having to do some of the planning aspects sort of in the evenings, etc. It sort of takes over, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it can get quite intense, but, you know, it's part of it, and I love it all. You know,
I guess that's why you were saying as well that you like the design to come from you, because then it's, in a way, it's probably easier to kind of pour so much time and energy into something.
Exactly.
If it's also your creation coming to life, right?
Yeah. You know, as I say, it's you know, because I'm designing it, it's kind of, you know, I've got the enthusiasm to, you know, come into work really early when we're really busy. Sometimes I start at 7 and then won't go home till 6. But, you know, if you're immersed in it, time goes so quickly, and
yeah,
you know, it's great.
Which must be grueling, because it's, you know, especially if it's in winter and it's, you know, cold workshop, etc. Like, that takes a toll, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
You know, you talk about that enthusiasm. Where does it come from? Have you always been sort of fascinated by designing and making?
Yeah, obviously, you know, I love architecture, and, you know, we've talked about all the designers we like, and, you know, just getting inspired by those guys, and, you know, particularly
William Burgess,
you know, people like Pujan. He's so prolific, but obviously he was prolific because he had enthusiasm for what he was doing, and that's the key. If you've got the enthusiasm, you know, working long hours is you know, it's not like working, is it? It's fun.
And I guess that illustrates why it's so important for you to understand the whole design, the whole project, and for an interior designer to share that with you, because actually what all of these designers have in common is that the whole project is cohesive. They were never really designing one thing in isolation.
Exactly.
Every single one of their projects, they was sort of, well, the most successful projects that they had were the ones where the architecture, the interiors, and every
little detail
is like thought about as a really important part.
I mean, I'd love to work on projects like that. You know, it's just to design a whole room, everything in it. That'd be fantastic.
It's the dream, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, so what was your childhood like then?
I mean, I grew up in a sort of quite artistic family, and, you know, I've got ancestors that did engineering and kind of making things. So it was a sort of natural step. That, I've always loved drawing. I've always loved making things. I've made things from ever since ever since I can remember. I've always made things from just bits of rubbish, kind of wood found in the garden, kind of
using nature.
Using nature, yeah, but mainly spaceships when I was a kid. But it's a part of me, making things and drawing things. Yeah, and I've always excelled at anything creative. Yeah.
And so, where did you, when you finished school, did you go to art college?
Yeah, went to Exeter Art College, and I really liked Exeter because when I visited it, I went to see quite a few art colleges, but Exeter stood out for me because it was a new course, and the tutors just seemed really enthusiastic. That it was all new to them. They had no house style. They were really sort of encouraging. They were nice people. Yeah.
I feel like that already shows your personality as a designer. Even then, because now you talk about wanting to innovate and wanting to always do something different, and having relationship with designers, you are very supportive.
Yeah.
And in the same way, in your choice of art college, it's already, you're going for space where it's going to be innovative. You're not, afraid to be, in a new place that's not sort of like established yet. You wanted to be at the heart of what was new. So at art college, were you already specialising in metalwork?
No, I've never had any formal training in metalwork, which in some ways is an advantage because I've had to kind of figure it out. All the techniques we use in the workshop are things that I've worked out, and how to form things. It's all from scratch, which makes it more unique because there's no kind of set way to do it. And I'm constantly improving those techniques as well. So.
And what about the drawing part of your practice? At what point did that? I know, because you said you were always drawing, right?
Yeah,
and
always,
you're self-taught with drawing, which I find incredible because.
I mean, I first started life drawing at 13, encouraged by my dad.
Right.
And I've drawn, consistently ever since.
So was your dad very encouraging then of you going to art college later on?
Yeah. I mean, he specifically didn't want me to do fine art because he said that they don't teach you in fine art. So he encouraged me to do something else, and
what sort of more craft focused?
Well, for art college, you normally do a foundation course where you sort of experiment with several different subjects.
Yeah.
And I did graphic design, and illustration and three-dimensional design. And it was three-dimensional design that just clicked with me. I loved it because obviously it's kind of using all of my skills. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's what I did.
Okay. And so then at what point did you start the metalwork? Was there like a turning point where that started to happen, or?
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of leaving college and kind of just, initial jobs. I was working for someone that worked in metal, and again, it just kind of clicked. I find it incredibly, it's a fantastic material to work with, especially with like welding. It's instant gluing of metal. It's great stuff. And the things you can do with metal, can heat and bend it and make it any shape. You can cast it, and it's a wonderful material.
So what was your first commission then?
My first commission was I used to make illuminated sculptures. I had those in a gallery in Battersea, and the owner of the gallery had an interior designer friend who he asked me if, just offhand, if I'd be able to make a stair balustrade in metal for his client. And I said yes, without really knowing how to do it. And
how big were your sculptures at the time? Like, just so I can sort of wrap my head around how different, like how much of a departure that was from your...
Yeah, I mean, those particular sculptures were about 6 foot tall, and they kind of looked like, do you know, The Matrix?
Yeah.
They were like a bit like the Sentinels, so but kind of standing up and illuminated.
Okay, so it was already metalwork and it was already large scale, but then that first commission, it was new in terms of the engineering side of things and the regulations.
Exactly, yeah. I'd never, considered having to make something that had to conform to rules and regulations, and particularly, I hadn't done that for very long, and then to suddenly have a commission to make a curving staircase, I had to try and work out how to do that. And actually the way that I worked it out is similar to how we do it now. Obviously I've tweaked the technique over the years, but essentially it was the same.
So what, so it's starting with drawing?
Starting with drawing, but also making the 3D template and working in the workshop on a replica staircase. Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, I love that approach about your work. I feel like that's, again, something that's a recurring theme, is that you sort of, rise to any challenge that's thrown your way.
Yeah, absolutely. The more difficult of a commission, the better in some ways, because, if I always think if I can imagine it, I can draw it. And if I can draw it, I can make it. I can work out how to make it. So it's... Yeah,
I love that. That's a really, because it's you're plucking something out of your mind onto paper and then into the real world.
It's creation, isn't it? It's creating from scratch. So every component is imagined and made from scratch.
Yeah. And so, what is your view on technology then?
Technology is advancing at a scary pace, and processes and techniques. With three-dimensional 3D printing and AI technology, that things can be literally printed nowadays. And it's difficult to know where that's going to go. But I always think, that there will always be a place for handmade things and creative talents. So. Yeah.
And so how much do you harness technology within your work?
I use it. If it's appropriate, we'll use laser cut technology and water jet, just because it's so accessible.
In what context?
Well, if it's very precise. I do drawings for sometimes scrolls and things, and if there's lots of them in a row, for example, I can draw one, have them made multiple times, and they're all exactly the same.
So what, like a sheet of metal, and it's then cut, and then you shape it?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
Okay.
With laser cut. Laser cutting is good for thin stuff. Water jet is thicker. But with, for example, these repousse leaves, these are formed from flat sheet, but we have the flat sheet made in laser cut. So it's like a laser cut blank, and obviously we can have loads of different sizes made and multiple of the same thing made, and then we just form them up into individual leaves or whatever it is.
Okay, so they're actually like the outline is very regular, but then the shaping is where it sort of comes to life.
Yeah, so it's obviously in the shaping they're all different because we're sort of hammering them out, so that they all end up unique.
And so then, what do you do in terms of the the finishing, do you like spray and gild and paint yourself, or does it go out to someone else to be finished?
No, we usually do all of the finishing ourselves. So
Okay.
obviously, if it goes outside, it has to be galvanised and then painted. So we obviously the galvanising is a process that someone else does. Sometimes we send out for spraying, but most of our interior metalwork is heated up and waxed.
Right.
So in black wax, so it's got that sort of lovely. I think this is black wax, so it's got a lovely kind of iridescent quality to it.
Yeah. So in effect, things are with you from design to installation.
Yeah. So it's the whole thing. It's from drawing to fitting and finishing. It's the whole thing. No one else gets involved.
And do you prefer to fit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because then I can make sure that because essentially we make things here, like for example a staircase. So we'll make it in sections and finish it completely. If it's got gilding, we'll do that, and then take it to site in its finished form and literally just weld the joins together on site, and then all the joins have to be completely hidden and seamless. Yeah. So we do the same finish, etc. But it's all got to be perfect. So it's you have no idea that there's a join there.
Yeah. Do you have any commissions that you've done for public buildings?
So the Langham Hotel, I designed the gates, the big bronze gates for that. There's various restaurants and clubs.
Okay.
That we've made stair balustrades, chandeliers, and wall lights for and things.
Yeah. So what would be a sort of dream commission or commissions?
I mean, the big, very public spaces. I'd love to make some very ornate, huge gates for a public park, or a country house or somewhere. Yeah, I love my work to be seen, because obviously most of our work is kind of hidden away in people's houses, which is which is great, but I like it to be seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess it's that tricky thing of, because of the time that goes into making it, it therefore has a certain price tag. Because it has a certain price tag, it has a particular customer base. Sure. And then that customer base tends to be quite private. So then, as you say, your work doesn't get seen. And I think most designer makers, they want to share what they're making with the world. And,
absolutely.
And I have spoken to, a lot of the makers I've spoken to have work in public collections, in museums. But obviously your work is on such a large scale. It would, I think it would take a museum that can really take on quite a large piece, right?
Yeah, I mean, that would be amazing as well, yeah.
I guess what would be really nice is if a museum would commission you to do something for their building, so they're actually, your work becomes part of that building in the same way that, say, like Sir Frederick Leighton, his work is in the V&A in one of the corridors, right? Yeah. And I think it was made for that corridor.
Yeah, sure.
That's the kind of thing that would be amazing.
Yeah, obviously that would be the ultimate. Yeah, one day.
And what about commissions abroad? Is that something you'd love more of?
Yeah, I mean, we do those projects. I mean, logistically they're always quite taxing, but I love going to different countries and seeing the cultures and working on site in those places. It makes that project very memorable. I mean, we've in the past we've had projects in France. There was one in Monaco, and we literally drove all the way down through France. It's like a little road trip, and we kind of stayed with clients in their house, kind of had meals with them and things.
Oh, that's amazing.
And did the commission, and it's great fun.
And that makes it really special because you also get to know the clients really well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you probably go first time to see the space and sort of template, etc., get to know them, come back, start making it, then come back for installation, probably. And I imagine you probably have some projects where sort of like multiple stages, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so what would be your advice for anyone who wants to get into the kind of work that you're...
I think it's having a sort of unique, we've got to have a unique selling point, all of us, in some way, I think. So it's having an idea and having passion for that idea, I think, and just pursuing it relentlessly. Obviously, it takes time as well. It takes time to build up a client base and a portfolio. It's the tricky bit is getting that first commission, because then from the first commission you can get the next commission, etc. So,
and are there any particular like schools or courses that are good for metalwork?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a really good blacksmith course in Hereford. That's a degree course. And, there's not many, but there are courses. There's one at Westdean.
So last question from me.
Sure.
I think that's kind of going back to the first few images I ever saw of your work. What really struck me was like dragons and snakes, and sort of like you carving the sort of like animal forms, and some of them sort of like mythical animals.
Yeah.
So do you have any work like that, or would you like to do more work like that as well?
I love working like that. Dragons are always a great thing to make, but obviously we've made a lot of snake handrails and door handles. Just brilliant. We made these lovely Viper cast bronze door handles for Bar 13 in Denmark Street.
Oh, cool! So that's something that people can go and see.
Yeah,
nice.
They can. And there's a dragon sofa in Bar 13 as well. So yeah, that was a fantastic commission. I love anything like that, because people are seeing them all the time, and they get to hold them and feel the texture.
So more carving and more work that's sort of cast in bronze, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I love working in bronze. It's a fantastic material. It's so rich in texture and colour, and kind of patinating it, you can make it go some beautiful colours like the verdigris, and it's just wonderful material.
Yeah, so creatively leaves a lot of options.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, I'm definitely going to go there to check it out now. That's a good reason for a cocktail.
Yeah. They do amazing cocktails.
Great. Well, thank you so much for making the
welcome.
time to speak with me and for sharing your work and showing us around your workshop.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Thank you. I've linked Matt's website below so that you can see more of his finished pieces. Let us know in the comments below which museum, gallery or historic house you think would be perfect for his work. Thank you for watching. It means a lot, especially as at the moment this channel is entirely self-funded. So please spread the word. Like, share and subscribe. See you next week. I was trying to get you to say drawing, imagine.
Oh, sorry. Can I just say it? And you can splice it onto the end of that.
We'll get it in.
Yeah.
Hang on.